I get a lot of questions about lateral pelvic tilts and hip hikes, and so I thought I would create this video in order to overcome some of the confusion and misconception. Rather than think about tight muscles being a contributing factor to this, there's a lot more to the story than that. And so I thought I would talk about what you would commonly see throughout the entire body with a hip hike, some of the assessment measurements that may be limited, and how we can tell with the assessment measurements that we have a hip hike on one side versus the other. And then a couple of exercises that I have found that I've used with my clients to really help improve this. Hi, I'm Alex Effer, founder of Resilient Training Rehab, and I've helped thousands of coaches and practitioners get better and faster results with their clients. Let's get into it. So when we're thinking about a lateral pelvic tilt, we got to think about it as a full body event. It's not just what's happening at the hips, but what's happening at the hips is also going to be happening at the rib cage. And again, this is not a muscle-based approach. We have something called a base of support, which essentially means that if I stand with my feet hip-width apart and I draw a box around my feet, everything within the box is my stability, my support. Everything outside the box is where I can move into. If, for some reason, I don't have the motion in my hips to stay within the base support, which is hip internal rotation, then I'm going to start to lean on the outside edge of my foot. I'm going to start to try to make the box into more of a rectangle. So essentially, all this is saying is, if you were to turn your body to the right and you roll on the outside edge of your foot, and then I keep on pushing you over towards the right side, you have to do something to catch yourself. Otherwise, you're going to fall over. And so what you're going to do is you're going to hike the hip up, because hiking the hip up is going to push you back into that base of support. That's what's happening with a lateral pelvic tilt. So let's just say I've got a pelvic tilt on this right side. I've got a pelvis turning towards the right. Now I go on the outside edge of the foot. Now I'm going to hike the hip up so I don't fall over. Now, my whole body is not going to face towards the right, so something has to rotate back on the left. So I'm going to have my pelvis turning right, then I'm going to have the rib cage turning back towards the left. And that's why it looks like somebody's standing straight in front of you. I'm not going to be looking to the right all the time. I have to be looking straight ahead. So that counter rotation to the left is going to allow that to happen. So now I've got a hip hike on the right. That's going to be associated with a shoulder that's more lower on the right side. And because I'm turning towards the left to rotate me back, so I'm facing straight ahead, I'm going to have a left shoulder that appears to be higher. That's going to happen all the way up into the skull, into the neck, and all the way down to the knees and to the feet. So we're going to see this right foot with a bit of a higher arch, left foot that's a little bit more collapsed. We're going to have a right knee that's going to be caving in a bit more, right? And that is just going to be this reactionary thing, again, to stay within my base of support. So this is a center of mass game. This is not a muscle game. I have to do whatever I can to get back within my base of support so I don't fall over. The muscles are going to tense up when I'm getting too far out of that base of support. Again, if I draw a box around my feet with my feet hip width apart, anything outside the box, if I go too far outside the box, I'm going to fall over. So I have to create this compensation to do that. So with these kind of people, you're going to see more of a limitation in hip flexion on the left. If my hip hike is on the right and the hips are turning right, I'm going to see better straight leg raise on the right. I'm going to see a better hip mobility in general on the right side versus the left, because if the pelvis is turning towards the right, then that means this hip is tilting forward. I've got a left hip that's tilting more forward and is going to be a little bit more externally rotated. So the back of the hip is going to generally be more stiff on the left side, which is why when these people squat, they're going to squat towards the right. They're going to shift towards the right because this right side has better mobility and it has better internal rotation. I'm going to shift away from the side that has less hip flexion and internal rotation. right? So I'm going to shift towards this right side. By having these type of assessment and understanding that if one side is better than the other, the pelvis is probably turning that way, that could give us a lot of strategies in order to overcome this. It gives us a protocol, or it gives us an idea of how we can start to turn the pelvis back to the left and the rib cage back towards the right, so that when I'm walking, I can dynamically shift either side, which is essentially what needs to happen during gait. The first exercise is going to be a cross connect. So it's going to be my right hip is going to be extended as my left hip is flexed. This is going to push and turn my pelvis towards the left. As I mentioned, the pelvis is going to be turning towards the right. By getting this hip extension, that is going to push and turn me back towards the left. That's essentially what we want to do. We want to really reinforce the inside edge of that right foot. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to put my foot against the wall and I'm going to have it slightly elevated. You could put a foam roller, you could put a yoga block, something underneath your foot so that it is not down on the ground underneath you. So this is going to bring my foot slightly higher, which is just going to open up the bottom part of my hip. I'm then going to lie on my back, keeping my knee slightly bent at all times on the right foot. I'm going to march this left knee up to 90 degrees. If you feel too much tension in the front of this left hip, you could put your foot on a bench or a chair or something like that just to keep it a little bit unloaded. So I'm going to have my feet in this position. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my elbow, I'm going to flex my bicep, and then I'm going to bring my elbow across my body so it's facing towards the right. What I don't want you to do is I don't want you to curl up like this. I want it to be nice and relaxed. I don't want there to be too much tension where my lower part of my rib cage is coming off the ground and I'm really overly rotating. I just want you to reach up towards the ceiling with your elbow and a little bit across. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a big breath in as I reach my elbow a little further. You should feel a big stretch in the right part of your rib cage in the backside. As I breathe out, I'm going to push the inside part of my right foot into the wall. I should feel my hamstring kicking on. When I do this, again, I don't want to straighten my knee. I want to keep my knee slightly bent. So don't think about pushing yourself away from the wall. Think about pushing your foot through the wall. You'll feel the difference. If you're trying to really push yourself away, you're going to extend your knee. If you just push yourself through the wall, you'll keep your knee bent. Then you're just going to hang out in this position. Breathe in as you reach your elbow. Breathe out as you push into the wall. So this next exercise is going to be a front foot elevated split squat with a same side hold, or an ipsilateral hold. I'm going to do this with the right leg forward, and the reason for this again is I'm really trying to push myself over towards the left. You can do it on both sides for sure, but if you were to do the left front foot elevated, then I would still hold the dumbbell in the right hand, because the objective is to turn the body toward the left. So by holding the weight on my right side with my right leg forward, that is going to pull me on the outside edge of the foot. So I have to push on the inside edge. And if I get that inside edge on the ground, that turns me towards the left. So I'm going to put my foot on top of something that's about 2 inches. That's going to naturally start my hip in a more relaxed position because I'm going to start with more weight on the back leg. Right? Then as I go down, I'm going to get more pronation, more of the inside arch of the right foot. As I come up, because I've got more weight on this side, I'm naturally going to turn towards the other side. I don't actually want you to turn. I want you to stay straight ahead, but that's what's going to be happening underlying. So I'm thinking about 80% of the pressure at the balls of my toes on the right, 20% on the inside part of my heel. I'm going to be thinking that I want about 20% of weight on this back foot. I don't want you to really lean back. Instead, I want you to stay over top of this right leg the whole time. So even as I'm coming up, I'm not going backwards. I'm just going to stay over top of this right leg. That's going to reinforce that hip internal rotation and the hip extension as I come up. So this third exercise, a bit of an alternative way to do this, but again, using the same principles of pushing myself off the right, going to the left, we're going to do a staggered stance, left cable preacher curl. Okay, so this is going to be a bicep curl that's going to help restore some of this rotation. This exercise is going to really turn me into the left side because by having this left leg slightly back, the cable is going to pull me towards it. The only thing to help to push me back against it, to resist it, is the right foot. And because this left foot's staggered, by pushing my right foot into the ground and coming back on the left heel, that's going to create that rotation of my pelvis towards the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by having more weight on the right foot. Then I'm going to push myself on an angle back to the left heel, really emphasizing the inside arch. I'm not going to have this right knee lock out. I want the right knee to stay bent and always has activity going through it. I'm really keeping it active. Then I'm going to turn this palm up. I'm going to reach across my body to further that rotation. And then I'm going to breathe in as I curl, look down on my bicep, breathe out as I go down. The reason why I'm looking down is because it's going to open up my upper back on the left side. So I'm just going to rep it out, breathe in as I come up, breathe out as I go down. Really emphasizing, if you feel like you've lost the right foot, then just reset, come back on the right foot, push yourself back. We're going to do about 2 sets of about 8 reps. And you can do this on both sides, but when you do it on the right side, still keep this foot position. So I'm still keeping on this left side, even though I'm curling with the right. When we're thinking about a lateral pelvic tilt, it really has to do more with shifting our center of gravity and really keeping within our base support. If we're shifting into one side, that means we're missing motion on the other side. So we need to really reinforce exercises that are going to push us out of the side where the hip hike is so that we can shift more into the other side. If you like this approach and want to learn more about how to dive into these mechanics, understanding how to assess the body to determine what exercises to pick based on compensations like this, check out my Evolved Biomechanics mentorship. We've had over 1,000 coaches and therapists who are already applying these principles and getting better and faster results with their clients. So I hope to see you at the next cohort. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, save, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.